Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy and you're watching The Morgue, where we treat the MMO industry like an open book, but it's written in Klingon and half the pages are missing. Today we're going to be discussing League of Legends, the breakout hit from Riot Games in the multiplayer online battle arena subgenre. Now right up front you're probably asking, well that's not an MMO, why the heck are you spending your show talking about that? Well, actually I asked you guys that very same question several weeks back. Did this game deserve a space on this show? And the answer from a really large majority of you guys was a resounding yes. Many of you even sent in complete diatribes as to why, yes, this is something we're talking about. And the game's reputation itself also speaks to this. Since its release, it has become one of the largest online gaming sensations in recent gaming history. And according to recent estimates, boasts an online player base of more than 15 million active players worldwide. That sounds like something we're talking about, don't you think? Now, because this is such a popular title, and because so many of you actually did recommend that I cover it on this show, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the correct angle so that I could bring it up on this show and actually have it mean something to an audience of MMO players. And I think I've finally got it. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about three primary aspects of this game: mechanics, economics, and community, and how the choices that Riot Games has made in these three primary aspects of the game's development could be potentially adapted to an MMO title. Or more simply put, why developers in the MMO genre might want to take a closer look at League of Legends to potentially draw some sort of inspiration for future mechanics in their own titles that could evolve the industry. Ah, you see that? Evolution and innovation. Now, I myself am not an expert on League of Legends. I'll go on record as saying that. So, in order to offer you guys a more thorough explanation of the way that the game works and a little more of an in-depth analysis of these particular mechanics we'll be discussing, I'm going to be bringing on a correspondent that is not only a huge fan of League of Legends, but is also a former game developer and an entrepreneur in the tech industry. And between the two of us, hopefully we can find something intelligent to talk about. Now, before we get into talking about the game itself, I actually have to take a few minutes of the show and lay an announcement on you guys about myself and the future of the Morgue. Because as many of you probably already know that have been following Stoked or Jupiter Broadcasting over the past week or so, in the last episode 100 of Stoked, I dropped a pretty big bomb, and it's going to have an impact on this show. That bomb being that I have accepted a position at Cryptic Studios as an associate systems designer. That means I'm now going to be a game developer. I gotta be honest, it's incredibly exciting and stressful. I hate moving. But this is like a lifelong dream come true, and when the opportunity came up for me to grab this, I just simply could not let it pass. Unfortunately, as good as this is for me on a personal level, there are a few downsides, particularly for you guys as an audience of the Morgue. You see, now that I will be an employed member of this industry, it would be a conflict of interest for me to continue editorializing and offering you news and insights into the way that the industry works from an outsider's perspective. And offering in-depth analysis and opinions on other titles that would be coming out as competitors, technically, could be seen as either self-serving or a conflict with my future employer. But it's not only my new employer that I need to think about this either. I mean, you guys, my audience, count on me to be relatively unbiased in my opinions on the industry. Well, if I am now an employed member of that industry, then obviously I have some sort of personal stake in seeing things play out in a certain manner, like my game be successful. And so I can't be counted on to be 100% unbiased and offer you guys the best opinions and the most well-researched and well-rounded editorials. And so, simply put, the Morgue can't remain the show that it is. And so, this episode, episode number 18, is the second to last episode of the Morgue that will probably ever be filmed. And I realize that kind of sounds like bad news, but you guys really got to think about it. This show helped me get that job. And while that wasn't initially my goal going into making this project work, it's one hell of a great outcome. Now, I did say that this is the second to last, which means there's one more episode coming up. And if you want to find out what I'm doing in that one, you'll have to watch this one all the way to the end. I know, I'm such a tease. All right, with all of that business out of the way, let's get into talking about League of Legends. All right, so I already covered the fact that this is not an MMO, but I'm covering it anyway. I'm going to talk about it on this show. But I'm also not an expert, as I said, so joining me on the show to help me talk about the specific aspects of League of Legends that are important to the MMO industry and some other stuff. This is going to be kind of a rambling conversation. But anyway, joining me is none other than Chris, who also goes by Diamond. Some of you that have been longtime fans of Jupiter Broadcasting might have even seen him posting in our forums and things like that, and a former game developer. And so we both got kind of this unique take on it. Him as a former game developer, me as a newbie game developer, and both fans of this game. But I'll be honest, I'll just come out and tell you guys right up front, I've got only about a dozen matches under my belt, so I'm a total noob. Chris is not.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what I'd like to start off with here, Chris, is just kind of give, since we're talking to an MMO audience here, and it's pretty likely that not a lot of MMOers have taken the opportunity to try out League of Legends. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to up front here talk a little bit about the aspects of League of Legends that make it not an MMO and the ones that actually make it blur the line. And I think persistence is really the key here.
Yes, definitely.
It would be safe to say, wouldn't it, that League of Legends offers no sort of persistence of world, right?
Definitely not of the world.
I mean, there's basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only like 3 or is it 4 different maps now that you can potentially battle on?
Yeah, so the classic map is a 5 versus 5. They turned that map into also a 3 versus 3. And then there's the new release that they recently did called Dominion. Mm-hmm. And Dominion is supposed to be a much faster game. We can talk about the game mechanics later.
I actually haven't tried out Dominion at all, so if there's anything specific that has either changed or is different on Dominion that you'd like to clarify as we go forward, feel free to butt in and tell me what's wrong.
And that map also has a 3 versus 3 version as well, I believe. I haven't played it though.
Oh, okay. So we're both kind of noobs on Dominion. Okay, that's good. But I saw their big
release last week.
Yeah, I saw their huge booth that they had at PAX and everything. Everybody looked really excited.
It stole the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest, I did not realize that League of Legends was as big as it was until I saw them and talked to them there at PAX. I knew that it was something that a lot of people had talked about, but good Lord. I mean, like, I think actually, I keep saying 15 million, but I think they're getting closer to 20 million at this point, active
users?
players. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, one of the unique aspects of this game, though, that actually brings in that many players is the fact that it is completely free. Now, I realize that I'm skipping ahead to the economics a little bit here, but there's actually a very strong tie-in between the economic model that they're using their cash shop and the player progression that is built into the game, because they have a very unique aspect. I think that it's probably safe to say that their form of player persistence or character persistence is something you don't see anywhere else in online gaming.
Yeah, it's much more of, instead of being an MMO game where you level your character and you get equipment for your character, they meet much more of a free-to-play model, even from the get-go of the game when it first launched. And that particular model is having the cash shop, and instead of focusing more on buying things and getting things for your character to make your character more special, their main aspect is actually the champions that you can play, because each time you play a new game, you get to a selection of free characters that you can play. However, those free characters, they change every week.
Yeah.
So if you get used to one particular character, and especially if you get used to playing against one particular character, that changes every week. So you can.
So even as a free-to-play gamer, if you never invest any money in this game, it never becomes stagnant because of that. And this rotation of champions, I love this for a couple reasons. One is, like I just said, it makes the gameplay remain fresh, because not only are you playing as new characters on a weekly basis, but so are your opponents if you're going up against other players.
Especially when you're going against other opponents, there are elements of persistence, and one of those elements is basically a level of your player, in a sense, and it reaches level 30.
They call that the summoner level.
As you are leveling your summoner level, you'll play against other summoners that are your level, and it's assumed that those people at the same level are the same skill level. So what you'll definitely see in that level, or as you level, is players who are playing the weekly rotation of characters, because those are the new players that haven't really had a particular character that they love and
Right.
that they really focus on. So every week it's something new, definitely, for you to
And
play.
the other side of that rotation of champions that I really enjoy, and I'm a big proponent of the free-to-play model, and I do understand as both a gamer and now a new dev that anytime you have a free-to-play gaming model, you have to incentivize people to actually shop on it, to actually spend money. And I think that by offering a new rotation of champions, every free-to-play gamer gets the opportunity to try out different gaming styles, different tactics within each individual match, and see if there's something that they latch onto and really enjoy. And for example, if they grow to enjoy a certain champion so much while that champion's free, they could potentially end up buying it the next week when it's no longer free. So
That's true.
It incentivizes those people to branch out beyond just their comfort zone and try new things, and then potentially invest in the game because they enjoy playing it a certain way.
Because playing a particular champion would constitute as something that you could buy to win. And obviously Riot doesn't want that kind of thing. So it's also possible to buy champions through points that you earn in the game as you play various matches playing League of Legends. I myself have bought numerous characters that are that I didn't pay for in cash, but I really like this character after playing the free weekend. So I bought this character, and when the team needs it, I can play that character.
Yeah, I'm the same way, actually. I like I said earlier, I've only got about a dozen matches under my belt, and yet through that time, I've already been able to afford buying 2 champions that I wouldn't have that were otherwise not just unlocked by default on my account. These were things I had to earn. And let me go back and clarify that point real quick, because even though this is a cash shop driven game, and you can buy things on the cash shop that very fundamentally affect your gameplay, and so by that definition, many people would consider that sort of model as pay to win. And I don't know that there's a way to really get around that in this game. I think it's just kind of, if you get into playing this, you're going to have to accept the fact that you can pay money to get an edge. But that edge is very slight. Am I right? I mean, you've been playing this game a lot longer than I, so maybe you have a different opinion on this, but from my limited experience, it seems that even if I invested thousands of dollars on Riot's cash shop, the edge that I would be gaining because I'm still a low-level character with a certain amount of experience under my belt.
Almost nothing.
Yeah, it really doesn't have that large of an impact on the outcome of any individual battle. It really just offers me options and flexibility.
The things that you would be able to get an edge on are really small and insignificant, almost nothing to an actual experienced player. A good example is you can purchase skins for your champion, and a lot of people really like this. This is one of the more popular things on the store, in my opinion. And the reason is because you always look the same no matter what kind of equipment you're wearing. Just whatever champion you chose, that's what you look like. Now, that is an advantage for the other team, because the moment that they spot you, they immediately know what abilities you have, what dangers they have to look out for, and what play style they need to use when facing your champion.
See, that's something that I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
It's clearly something that a more experienced player would, because you get used to seeing the same players, the same heroes, champions over and over again.
Yeah,
so you're saying that by investing in a separate skin, like, for example, you sent me some footage of you playing as a character that typically looks like a wolf, but you bought a skin that makes him wear a manatee head.
Yeah.
So potentially you can throw off the enemy by not looking like the character that you are actually playing.
Exactly. It really matters when, so the game is 5 versus 5, and it really matters when those 5 players are fighting against other 5 players with lots of abilities going on. You want to focus on one particular player as the person that your group attacks, and that depends on whether or not they're a tank style where they have lots of hit points and lots of armor, or they're a really squishy mage. And so what in general is that it kind of goes back to the RTS style of playing when you're playing in esports. You look at where the camera is, and you instantly know where the battle is going. Are you winning? Are you losing? What do you need to do in order to come out of this situation as best as possible? And when characters are looking different, when they're in a different spot than you expect them to be, that one split second can make you make a bad decision, and that could cost you the game.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'd never thought that the act of buying a cosmetic skin could have such a tactical advantage, but
Yeah.
I can definitely see once you've learned the game to a certain degree and learned a certain way of expecting it to play out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying that at the low end, where I'm at, I am more of the opinion that buying a specific champion can potentially sway a battle one way or another. There are a few, as a noob like myself, some of the champions, I don't want to mention any by name, but Shogath seem really vastly overpowered when you're going up against them. But if you're saying at the higher game, once you actually get good at the game and you understand ways to counter certain skills and to deal with certain characters in different ways, just having them alter their appearance is enough to throw you off your game.
Yeah, so as a skilled player, you actually have to learn all of the champions and know what their abilities are. You also have to know what they look like and be able to identify them almost instantly.
That's a really unique facet of this. Now, let's talk a little bit about how this game appeals to the MMO gamer. Now, we touched very briefly on persistence of character and how it's actually persistence of player to a certain degree, because your character, your champion, is reset. In every single match, you start over at level 1 with no abilities and no items. That sounds like a bad thing. I mean, when you say it like that, when you have to start over every single match, which can be anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, I mean, it's pretty bite-sized, and you have to start over every single time. A lot of people might go, oh, that sounds like such a chore. But think about it. That's the reason that you play MMOs, isn't it? A huge chunk of the MMO playing audience out there loves to level up, loves to get new gear, loves to get bigger numbers.
Loves to make new characters.
Yeah, loves to make new characters. And if you can,
same MMO, yeah.
In League of Legends, they condense that entire experience of leveling up and advancing your character from this several month-long process that it might be in something like World of Warcraft or something of that ilk, and down into this tiny little bite-sized enjoyment package where you're leveling up on such a regular basis and getting new powers, and they're getting more powerful, and you're getting new equipment on a regular basis, and stomping your enemies on just repeatedly. It's really viscerally fun, and it really delivers on that. You mentioned before we started recording of Richard Bartle, who put out that...
Yeah, he called it the Bartle test, the player test. It's it consists of 4 different player types for people that play MMOs. For those that don't know, Richard Bartle is considered one of the fathers of MMOs in general. He created one of the very first online persistent games. They were called MUDs back then, and they were only typing. And he's done lots of papers on how MMO players play games and how developers should make MMOs.
And the Bartle test basically breaks down any MMO gamer into 4 primary categories.
Yes.
Explorers, achievers, killers or conquerors, and socializers.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, we actually got on this subject because obviously a PvP game really seems intended to play up the killer, the conqueror type. But having this achievement within every single match, having you spoon-fed levels on such a regular basis and new equipment and everything, it really heavily speaks to the achiever as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that every single match can potentially net you something as well as on both within that match itself and for your summoner as well. It's really appealing for achievers like myself.
There's certainly lots of crossover, especially since League of Legends has ladders as well. There's no necessarily incentive to be on the top of the ladder, but as an achiever, you would want to be that person on the top of the ladder with your team. So it speaks to both the competitive gamer, which is kind of classified in the conquerors area, and it definitely speaks to the achievers. And what's interesting, in my opinion, is in terms of MMOs, those are the 2 player bases that are really spoken for in games. You have achievers that play games like EverQuest back in the day and World of Warcraft now, and then you have the conquerors or killers that play games like EVE Online. And those are the really mainstay player bases, and League of Legends speaks to both of those.
It's interesting also that in a typical MMO, and I realize this is a really big blanket statement, there's many exceptions to this, but in a typical MMO, those 2 sides don't really see eye to eye all the time. You've got your achievers that are, by and large, end up being like high-end gaming raiders that want to achieve.
They want to be left alone.
Yeah, and they don't like PvP for the most part. The hardcore achievers are in there for the PvE experience of beating the game, while the PvPers want to beat up other players. And it's interesting that League of Legends has managed to embrace those two as its core rather than as two parts of its core. Also, it's also additionally interesting that just in a general sense in MMOs, developers and communities tend to think of PvP as a minority population within their games, and yet here we have a game that is entirely based solely on PvP. There's nothing else you can do. I mean, you can go up against AI, but really that's just to learn to PvP. And and this one game that's based solely around this aspect of beating up on other people is hugely more popular than any other Western-based MMO. It's even bigger than World of Warcraft in terms of number of people playing it.
Yeah. Well, if World of Warcraft was free to play, we could compare those numbers. But
well, that's probably true.
I think the important part to realize is League of Legends is, if you go into the history of the game style that it is,
which I haven't actually mentioned, MOBAs, a multiplayer online battle arena, which was actually originated by, correct me if I'm wrong, but Defense of the Ancients was the first one of these, wasn't it?
That was the most popular iteration was a Warcraft 3 mod, but it even goes back further than that. It was called something else. I don't have it up with me now, but basically it's this constant evolution of a RTS mod that basically, if you think of an RTS, you control multiple characters, but in Defense of the Ancients and with League of Legends, you only control your character. But the other AI creeps, they're called, are still in the game. And basically, what you're looking at now when you play League of Legends and what the game style that you're looking at is basically the accumulation of many years of that mod that became Defense of the Ancients. And
interestingly enough, that some people might not realize, completely rooted in real-time strategy. Even though now they have gotten so far away from that it's blended into this completely other subgenre, its roots are still in RTSs. It's interesting to see this particular subgenre continue to evolve. For example, like up until now with Defense of the Ancients and League of Legends, it's been very common to have this over-the-shoulder kind of God mode camera locking. But I've even seen recent MOBAs that have taken that down into the playing field, and you're playing practically a third-person or first-person perspective in the same game style, but just by changing the camera, it gives it a completely different feel. So obviously this is a subgenre in its infancy that we will continue to see evolve. I'm actually interested in whether or not this will get even closer to becoming more of an MMO gamer's haven.
I think in terms of involving the game, the most important thing to look at is the new game style that they have coming, that just came out, called Dominion. So the classic map is a 5 versus 5, and it generally takes an hour. In Dominion, the game style is changed to more of a capture the flag game, and they're going to iterate on that, certainly. But what you'll see here is that if this particular new map catches on, then what its clue is it's a clue that people like this, I play a single character on a team against another team, not in terms of big melee brawls, but in terms of I only have my character that I focus on and I level up and I have equipment. And if Dominion works, what that is going to do is it's just going to open up a big waterfall, in my opinion, of other game styles that will come out and other clones of this game that will come out, because people will realize that, oh, I really like this style. It will be almost its own genre in itself. Like we have FPSs, we have RTSs, we might have a DOTA style genre.
Yeah, I think we're already there, to be honest. I think that the multiplayer online battle arena is becoming a full-fledged subgenre in itself, and I think League of Legends is almost exclusively to thank for that. I mean, it was not obviously the first, but there are so many things that I think most players can agree it's doing right.
The important part is that for Dota was always a popular mod, and people always played it. The interesting thing that League of Legends brings in terms, not in just in terms of added game style, is they prove that you can actually make money off of this.
Yes.
And that's going to have lots of business types going crazy about the possibilities of all the new game styles that they're going to have.
Well, you could argue that that's even possibly some of the motivation behind Valve taking over Defense of the Ancients and coming out with Defense of the Ancients 2
exactly.
in the near future. Just the fact that it's been proven you can make money on it, well, obviously somebody's going to want to.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Dota 2 is a Warcraft 3 mod, and Blizzard made Warcraft 3, and they've said that they've been working on their own version of this game as well. But it's true for them too, in my opinion, that they didn't start really considering this until League of Legends came out and proved that you can make a lot of money on this, and they came out with the free-to-play style, which means that the free-to-play games work in a Western market.
Yeah. It's a groundbreaker in many different ways. Let's get back to talking a little bit about the player persistence, rather, and the summoner level and things like that, because I want to, again, reinforce the fact that this ties directly into their unique cash shop model. And, again, I have limited experience with this, so if I'm getting any of this wrong, feel free to butt in and correct me. But as you level up in this game, you unlock some slots, basically. And there's a talent type system where you can advance your summoner's specialization in these like 3 different trees, which by the way can be reset at any time. I love that. I was afraid that as I leveled up they were going to lock me into that and they don't pay for resets. No, but they don't do that. So I really love that. But also you level up these rune slots. You unlock more rune slots as you level up. But the runes that you take, that you fill in those slots with, have to be purchased on the cash shop. Now, they can be purchased using the influence points that you earned for just doing your matches. The same thing we were talking earlier about. I've used most of mine to buy champions, those other couple champions that I've unlocked, just so I have some options on the type of gameplay that I can play with. But you can also use those same influence points to buy runes that you fill into these rune slots. And these are, again, like passive bonuses that affect you as a player in any match that you play, regardless of the champion that you play.
Yeah. A lot of the bonuses are small, but they stack up because you can slot many of them as your character levels up. The other thing that's important too is that the runes that you purchase are actually tiered. There's the first 10 levels, the second 10, and then the last 10.
Right.
And
so eventually, as you continue leveling up, you eventually have to replace your lower level your runes in order to get the full benefit from them.
Yeah. Now, that's another good example of when you can pay to win, in a sense that you can buy all the runes, the best runes possible, if you don't have the money for it.
I guess when you reach the next tier, you could buy all of the best runes possible instead of having to slowly replace them.
Yeah, and like let's say if you wanted to play all of the champions as you were leveling up, then you didn't have any more points that you just had available to buy the runes.
Right. Okay, so up until now we've been talking a lot about the mechanics, but let's go, actually let's circle back to the Bartle thing just for a second, because we touched on player advancement through achieving and the killer/conqueror. Obviously the explorer is really nothing. I mean, you're playing the same 3 or 4 maps over and over. There's nothing really to explore here. Once you've done it once, you've seen it all. But let's focus now a little bit on the socializer, because believe it or not, the community that has formed around this PvP battle arena game is really unique and really strong in many aspects. Let's talk first a little bit about the tribunal system, because this is something that fascinates me. And I know that you don't have any hands-on experience with this. I talked with you a little bit about that before the show. I don't actually either, because, and this is one of the aspects that I find the most interesting, it's only available for level-capped players. I don't know if you actually are, but I'm obviously not.
I didn't sign up for it.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't sign up. Okay. Now, the tribunal, if you're not aware of this, is basically a system where players themselves get set up as judge, jury, and executioner for griefers, cheaters, all of the negative aspects that might happen in any sort of competitive online gameplay. Basically anything you can think of that could potentially negatively have an impact on your enjoyment of the title. Whenever you're playing a game, even if you're not signed up with the tribunal, I believe you can send in like some sort of ticket system, right? Where you can like... Yeah,
after you're done with playing a game, if you think that somebody was abusing the policy rules or not, there's various policy rules that they have, and if some player didn't follow that, you can report that individual player, and the entire game that you just played, including chat, except for private chat, is recorded and made available to the tribunals, who can then judge whether or not this person was violating any of those rules.
Yeah. Now, the reason that this is roped off from lower level players is obviously to get rid of exploiting the tribunal system itself. It's not a matter that it's a long and difficult and arduous journey and only the best of the best make it to level cap. Well, no, it's just a matter of playing the game. You'll get there eventually. it doesn't really probably take all that much time, but it does take enough time that by the time you're there, you aren't in a position where you'll risk having your own account taken from you by giving a whole bunch of negative or positive judgments to
and
friends and
you'll be able
family.
to qualify whether or not it was actually
right. You also have the basis of experience to know whether or not this person's complaint actually holds any merit. Now, to be honest, from the experience or from the information that I've gathered on the tribunal system, 90 to 95% of the time, those complaints are warranted. And it really just comes down to having the players mete out justice on their own behalf. I mean, and this is also interesting is that this can only happen in a free-to-play game. I spoke a little bit with one of the developers there when I was with them at PAX about the system, and they said that when they were pushing this tribunal system forward, when they wanted to implement it, their legal guys were really nervous about the fact that people potentially pay for things in this game, and that they can have those things that they paid for taken away by other players. What it basically comes down to, why that's a legal loophole, they don't have to be all up in arms about that, is because those players have violated their terms of service, just like you said.
Yeah, and anything actually that is a serious punishment actually does get reviewed by Riot employees.
Okay, so there is an extra level of safety net there, so it's not just on the players themselves.
Anything past a one-day temporary ban gets reviewed to make sure that this player actually deserved.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that there was that level of oversight there, but I'm sure anybody that finds themselves on the gavel end of the tribunal will be happy to hear that.
Yeah. It's important to think, too, about why this was needed. In a free-to-play game, especially with what you just said, 20 million users, there's thousands and thousands of games going on at any particular time. Mm-hmm. And it's easy when the person broke the rules because they swore or did harassment in chat, because that's
really
the
easy
quick
stuff.
And dry.
Right.
Now, there's also rules of sportsmanship in the terms of service for League of Legends, and that's really difficult to judge, because you might need to watch the entire game to see whether or not this player was really a giant noob or they were trying to troll the other players and make them lose intentionally.
Because there's things like kill feeding that you can do. You can go and sacrifice yourself to the enemy team to make them stronger, and maybe they'll turn around and do the same for you in the next match. Just for ease of leveling up your summoner and getting out to the next rank or something like that. But that's against the terms of service or terms of sportsmanship. But you're right. I mean, I've had really terrible matches where it probably might have looked like somebody more experienced, like I was kill feeding. I wasn't. I'm just terrible, honestly. But it takes a very experienced eye to be able to go in there and watch the recording and read through the logs and know that, no, this guy's just terrible. And it's not something that necessarily a Riot employee always will have the time to go through. So
it would cost way too much to review all of the complaints that they would have.
Now,
absolutely.
One of the, I don't know if you'd call it a complaint, but one of the concerns that has been raised in the community about the tribunal system is, what do those players that participate in the tribunal actually get out of it? I don't really know an answer to this. Is there anything that you can think of other than the satisfaction of knowing that they've tried their best to better the community in some way?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the social aspect of the players that want to play MMOs. The people that want to socialize in games like this, they want a good community. They want to be able to be, they want to be exclusive. They want to have the people that they enjoy talking to in their community. And so when they judge, you probably find that a lot of the socializers are the ones that sign up for the tribunal system.
The social aspects of this game really go much deeper than I would ever have expected, honestly. I'm not a huge proponent of PvP. I've said that many times in the past. I don't really like, just at a core concept, that the whole concept of having to bash somebody else down in order to achieve. That's just a personal preference of mine. So, but seeing that a strong, tight-knit community can form on top of that mechanic is always interesting to me to see how it forms. And let's move on from the tribunal and talk about Dota, or the whole Dota style of gaming is huge in competitive gaming, and League of Legends is no exception.
Yes. Dota as well is also equally just as popular. It's interesting because League of Legends actually opened up and created a lot more players for this genre of the game instead of cannibalizing against the old Dota players. So So there's actually still very healthy Dota esports going on, and there's a very healthy esports for League of Legends as well.
It's interesting. Didn't Valve recently host a League of Legends championship?
No, Dota 2. They hosted the Dota 2 International.
Oh, right.
And that was promotional for their new Dota 2. What's interesting about that is this League of Legends is an offshoot of Dota. There's a lot of differences in the game style of Dota that is in League of Legends. However, Dota 2 is almost a clone of the Dota style. So while I said that League of Legends didn't necessarily cannibalize its the own genre, it's very possible that Dota 2 might, just because it's literally supposed to be a clone and a visual upgrade.
Just the same thing,
game.
Bigger, better, stronger, faster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well that'll be interesting to see how that rolls out. I haven't been watching Dota 2 very closely. When is that planned to release? Do you know?
It's Valve.
Oh, so when it's done.
Yeah. What's interesting too about Dota 2 as well is that Valve kind of upped the ante in terms of esports. When they did the international, the Dota 2 competition, it was the largest prize pool that any esports has ever seen, including other genres like StarCraft.
Whoa.
Yeah,
really?
The team that won got $1 million. The total prize pool was $1.6 million. The 0.6 being divided up among second and third and fourth place. That's the most that esports has ever seen. It was quite an announcement. Yeah.
And so not only did that come from the makers of a game in this genre that's not out yet, which is somewhat amusing, but also from a genre that barely exists. I mean, we were just saying earlier, this is not necessarily a full-fledged subgenre of gaming yet. This is just something that's in its infancy. The whole multiplayer online battle arena gaming concept is not necessarily a tried and true method. It's not like first-person shooters where you know it's going to be around forever. Just because so many people love it. This is still a risky proposition business-wise.
Yeah, it's certainly true in terms of genre. There's only three games, and one's not been released. There's the old mod, there's the League of Legends, and then there's the unreleased Dota 2. It's interesting to note, though, in terms of player base, the United States and North America in general is actually the minority that enjoys this style of game. It's incredibly popular in Asia, and it's incredibly popular in Europe. If you look at the teams that play esports, the majority of them are from Asia and from Europe. There are not very many teams at all whatsoever from the United States.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So in addition to esports, where League of Legends is played professionally, there's lots of smaller leagues that play. One of the ones that I'm participating in that just recently ended is one put on by an organization called Studio Rumble. And Studio Rumble is more of a gathering of game developers that want to play competitively against other studios in various games.
Wow, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in there.
Yeah, well, you know.
Well, I guess I could be.
So it started in 2007. We originally put the organization together to play Team Fortress 2 when it first released. And so we recently just finished up League of Legends tournament. And there was a casual bracket and a hardcore bracket. And I was in the casual bracket, but...
How'd you do? Just curious.
Our team, we did pretty good, actually. We had 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 forfeits. So that makes us 4-2.
All right. Win by forfeit.
Yes, exactly.
Still a win.
But what's really interesting about this is that this organization is not really headed by anything. It's kind of a community-run group. And there's other organizations like that. For instance, in StarCraft 2, Day 9 put out lots of tournaments for various studios to compete with each other. But since it's a studio versus studio tournament, we had a lot of Riot players, the developers of League of Legends, play as well.
Well, that must have been a lot of fun. Now, and that just goes to show that the communities that can form around this type of competitive atmosphere aren't necessarily like, I'm so much better than you and I'm going to stomp your face into the dust. It's more like, well, it's kind of like board game night, where you get together with your friends and try to make them land on your boardwalk, where after you've got 3 hotels on it. it's friendly competition, and I think that the casual nature of League of Legends and some of the other games you mentioned, like Team Fortress 2, I think that really lends itself very well to a new type of PvP battle arena type games that are starting to emerge more freely. And I think, honestly, I think the free-to-play gaming model is a big win for that particular type of gaming, because it's so much more casual at its core, because it has to speak to people that don't have to invest in it. And when you're not forced to take it seriously, you can have such a better time with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can, like I mentioned, there's a casual bracket for the tournament that we had. You wouldn't even be able to have that if it was a for-pay game.
Well, all right, Chris, I think that's all that we've got to cover right now, but I'm going to go ahead and invite anybody that's watched this episode to get in touch with me. If they have any questions for you, I'd feel free to. I'd be happy to relay them on.
Just to plug Riot a little bit, they're hiring a lot, so if any of you feel that you want to become a game dev too, just check out their website and you'll see all their job postings.
Then you too can live the dream like I am now.
You have to do a podcast first, though.
No, that's not true. It helps. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the second to last episode of The Morgue. Stop crying. Okay, now I'll just go ahead and drop the big news on you of what our very last episode will be, because I fully intend to go out with a bang. Well, of all the teases that I've been giving you guys over the last few episodes about some of the big plans that I've had for The Morgue, one has stuck out in my mind as the episode that would be the most fun, the most community-focused, and the most appreciated by the MMO gamer community as a whole. And so, next week's episode, the final episode of The Morgue, will be my complete tribute to Star Wars Galaxies. Now, in the interest of facilitating a very dynamic environment for that episode, I'm going to be bringing on more callers to join me on that one. Heather, who was on a previous episode with me and was discussing player housing, will probably be joining me again, as well as one other fleetmate from Star Trek Online that wants to talk about the bounty system. If there's any particular aspect of Star Wars Galaxies that you feel needs to be focused on and talked about, and you have yourself a video camera and would like to join me on Skype, please leave a comment on this episode. We won't have a lot of time to try to plan, but I'd like to get as many different voices on the show as I can, just to show people out there how beloved this game was at one point. And throughout the course of next week's episode, we'll be discussing many of the failing points it had, as well as some of the mechanics that we all want to see returned to the MMO industry, or potentially why those days are gone. All of that and more in next week's episode of The Morgue. I hope to see you there. And until then, everybody, play smart. And if you keep making that face, it'll freeze that way. Hello. I heard that.
Outtakes.